Hello, welcome back to the Piping Pastor on this yet another 100-degree plus day in El Paso. I was taking my youngest to her course this morning. My two younger ones attend an early college high school here in Texas. And as part of that, their curriculum, they have to take a college course on campus every summer. So she's doing that just now. And so earlier this morning, as we walked out of the house, she was like, "Why does it feel so warm?" It's like 85 degrees, even the early hours of the morning. So yes, heat is definitely here to stay. Well, today, as you can tell by the title of the video, um, wasn't intended to indicate that Carter Hall equals loneliness, but I did want to make mention of the fact that I am finally enjoying some Carter Hall. So, Smarty Bob, you just wore me down. Uh, no, I had intended on trying this for a long time. I hear a lot of people talk about it, not just Smarty Bob, of course, but uh, Ethan also enjoys Carter Hall while doing yard work. And I thought, you know what? That's a good old fashioned Cadre blend. I should get into that. And I was on pipesandcigars.com having a look around because I had not received any notifications yet. I signed up for notifications for when Fusileer's Ration would be available again. And I had not seen it, but when I got their magazine, they were advertising for it. I was, well, that's curious. I haven't received notifications that it's back in stock. So I went on the website, and lo and behold, it's there. So I ordered some of that. I also ordered some Old Dark Fired, which is also available in bulk, even though we were all scared into thinking that, oh, it's all going away forever. It's still there in batches. It probably won't be forever. So yes, if you want some, you should order it. So I went ahead and got 8 tins of Fusileer's Rations and 8 ounces of bulk Old Dark Fired. So I'm good to go on those. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and pull the trigger and get a tub of Carter Hall. I had been reticent to do so because I thought that's a big tub of tobacco. And what I didn't want to have happen is get this large tub of tobacco, be disappointed in it, and then have to ship it off or do something else with it. So, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a go and see what it's like. And of course, because it's an old fashioned Cadre blend, even though I'm not a huge fan of the corncob pipes, I thought, well, you know what? It feels like it should be done in a corncob. And you know what? I'm very happy with it. When you first pop it open, the tub note is very pronounced bourbon and chocolate. Moisture content's about perfect. But I was like, oh, that's going to be very aromatic flavoring. But in truth, you get some hints of it, but it's not overpowering. The, I mean, they're there, especially because I'm having an iced coffee. It's noticeable, but not over the top. It has the flavor of very nice tobacco. But and speaking of previous comment about my daughter's in school, we got notification from my oldest who's in college that the grants and scholarships amounts for this year have been reduced. She was actually notified first via just a cacophony of uh, complaints and worried messages on these group chats that she's with some of her fellow students. I think she said she got 50 messages in the span of about 8 hours. because everyone's grants and scholarships are being reduced this year. Because of the cuts in federal funding from the current administration, whether it be the DOGE cuts or research funding cuts, whatever it is. I mean, they're doing a lot of cuts all across the board with regard to higher education. Even universities that are not in the news, like Harvard and so forth, are feeling the pinch. And there are some places where universities will not make cuts, and one of those is, of course, professors' salaries and the salaries of administrators. You won't see that happen because many of them are under contract or tenured and so forth, and they need to keep the research funding going somehow, because that research funding is how they get further grants, and it's also how they get their international accolades and so on and so forth. So what's the place they can cut? The money they give to students to go there. Now, we are in a better position than most because we had planned in advance for education for our kids. So we had college funds, and my daughter also has money set aside of her own where she worked and saved, so she wouldn't have to go into debt to go to college. And we had some other money set aside in emergency funds and things like that. So for us, it's, it was a shock, but it's not something that's completely unmanageable. Most people are not in that position, either because of lack of forethought and lack of planning, or just because they don't have the financial resources, and they were completely reliant on these grants and scholarships for their child to go to school without incurring debt. Why do I share that? Because these notifications are just now going out this week. So you're going to start hearing about this because people are going to get these emails, they're going to get these letters, they're going to realize they owe $12,000, $13,000 more than what they have. And the outcry will go up. What's going on with these cuts, right? Because prior to this, if you're talking about cuts to research, cuts to universities, and so on and so forth, if it doesn't have a direct effect on you, most people are like, oh, fine, whatever. Cut the money from the universities, who cares? Do this, do that. And people just don't care, or they don't pay attention. They're not watching the news. They're not staying up to date on what's going on with, different things happening in the administration and so forth. And it all becomes white noise until they get that letter in the mail. Oh, by the way, now you owe us 20 grand more than you thought you were going to owe because of these financial cuts, because of the administration. That's when it becomes personal, and that's when people start taking notice and getting involved. So you'll start hearing a lot about that, I have no doubt. And the administration will have to react to it. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but as I said, I would just plan for something to happen over the next few weeks as people start to contact their local and state representatives, and then it moves its way up the chain, and then you'll start seeing people on the news and so on and so forth. Because now it's not going to be some riot or demonstration on the other side of the country. It's going to be affecting these people's own individual checking accounts, and that's when they'll take notice and take action and start getting noisy. Good lesson in planning too. Never count on any kind of government subsidy program, whether it be scholarships, grants, or even Social Security. It would be nice to be able to count on those kind of things, but at the end of the day, things change. Much better off taking care of your own finances. But in any case, I've been reading recently The Eternal Now by Paul Tillich. And I was struck as I was going through these first few chapters when he's discussing loneliness and solitude and the difference. Now, he begins with a premise that's, one could argue, rather depressing. At the end of the day, we are all alone. We are created as individuals. We don't share space and time and things like that with another person. We are literally singular individuals and we're alone. And he likens it to a star traveling through space. Wonderfully brilliant, beautiful, but alone. Even in the company of others, we are still individuals. And while the start of that, as I said, may sound a little depressing, he makes the rather keen observation that there's a difference between loneliness and solitude. And he uses the biblical example of Matthew, where Jesus goes off to be by himself, right? And he contrasts that with Psalm 25, when David is saying, I am dejected and alone. Show me your gracious mercy. I am lonely. Help me out here. And I think that there's an important lesson for that in us, or important lesson in that for us, to get my prepositions correct. That, yeah, we are singular individuals, and we are called to be in community, in the ecclesia. It says that in the Bible very clearly. We're not to forsake the fellowship of believers. But at the end of the day, our central core of ourselves is as an individual. But that doesn't mean that we have to be lonely, even in moments of solitude. Moments like this afternoon, when I'm here in my smoking lounge, that none of the family actually comes in. My oldest daughter loves the aesthetic. She's like, the layout of this is nice, but none of them like the smell of pipe smoke. So, this is a time of solitude for myself. Once I turn this camera off and I stop recording this video, I'll have some time of solitude by myself, whether I'm reading or just smoking or what have you. And in that, there's a healing moment where I can just be alone with my thoughts. And I think that's a benefit we have as pipe smokers, that this lends itself, although we do have great community, it lends itself to quiet contemplation and reflection individually. And that is solitude, and that is good, and that is healthy. Because it's in those moments where we can truly take a look at ourselves and think about things that we need to think about at a more deep level. It also allows us that opportunity to be free of distraction to commune with God. Because even though we are individuals, right, we still have that eternal relationship with God the Father, who has created us and works in and through us. So while from the perspective of humanity and the created order and so on and so forth, we are individuals alone, we still have a constant relationship and communication with God. Loneliness, on the other hand, is when we can be in a crowd of people and be lonely because we are lacking any kind of connection or communication with others. And we can be lonely in a crowd because we don't have that central initial connection with God the Father. You see, that's what allows us to have solitude without loneliness, and allows us to be in a crowd of people and not be lonely. Because the only way to truly not be lonely is to be in a communication and a commune with another person. And we can't do that with another human being. They cannot be inside us, right? In a real spiritual connection, communicative sense. But God can. God does. God will. God desires to. So when we talk about being lonely, we're talking about being in a position where that relationship here is not right or non-existent or being ignored. And because of that, we don't feel that connection. And that internal connection to God is what prevents us from being lonely, even when we're by ourselves. So solitude can be and is a good thing. Loneliness is kind of a bummer. But the way to get out of being lonely is not just being around a bunch of other people. The way to not be lonely is to have a true personal relationship with the God who will never leave nor forsake you, and the God who is always with you from the inside out and knows every hair on your head. So enjoy some solitude, but don't wallow in loneliness. Well, I am going to return to my newly discovered yet very old tobacco. I hope you have a lovely week, and as always, happy reading.